Hey, welcome back, listening audience. Thanks again for downloading the Noggin Notes podcast. As always, we are humbled by your listenership, and we appreciate it. Noggin Notes, we believe, is the only podcast that aims to educate and enrich your noggin in all matters of wellness, chiefly mental wellness, but across spirituality, psychology, emotional functioning, neurochemistry, and all matters of society that might impact you and your well-being. So we do that by interviewing people and bringing them on the show, and we try to spread cheer and insight and goodwill, and we try to encourage people to do things in their communities that maybe are going on in other communities. Our guests this week are Jay Zimmerman and Trey Miller. Both are veterans of the U.S. military of a couple of different branches, and they've got their stories to share about their own mental health struggles and achievements and what they're doing to help others. And I think you're going to find it really enriching. I know I did. It's one of the longest interviews I've done. I'm very proud to know both gentlemen, and they're going to be awesome. So I'm not going to talk much more about them. They'll talk plenty. As for our sponsors, as always, Zephyr Wellness, which is the company that I co-own in Reno, Nevada, and Sparks, Nevada. We do have 2 locations to serve you, but obviously we're always in telehealth as well. Since the pandemic and ongoing thereafter, we offer telehealth services, and we couldn't be prouder to do it. Check out zephyrwellness.org. Take most major insurances, and if we don't have your insurance on file, we're not in network, we have awesome graduate practicum students who can help you out at a very nominal fee, and we're really proud of that program too. Also follow us on the Instagram and the Twitter and the Facebook, and subscribe to us on the YouTube, and you can get lots more content like this to help you make your life a little smoother. Our other sponsor is Audible. We're thankful to Audible and its very expansive reach of audio content. It's really, truly unmatched. If you go to audibletrial.com/nogginnotes, you can get a free 30-day trial, complete with a free download. You help yourself out because you're expanding your knowledge base, and you help us out, and you're helping out Audible. Because with every dollar you spend, they get to buy more books, and so on and so forth. And that's how it all works. So audibletrial.com/nogginnotes. Get your free 30-day trial. Cancel anytime. Keep the free download that you get. audibletrial.com/nogginnotes. They tell us to say that 3 times because apparently it sticks after that. So thanks for downloading us on the interwebs. Enjoy the podcast. Enjoy my interview with Jay and Trey. Have a wonderful day. Well, on Noggin Notes, we are blessed to have a couple of really cool guests who are both veterans of the military. Jay Zimmerman, Jason, if you will, and Trey Miller. And they both do really cool work in the veteran community and in advocacy, and they have stories to tell themselves about mental wellness and how it's very complex with regard to the veteran community, and it's very different from people who I guess just walk the street, running their normal lives and daily jobs. And I've invited them on to explain some of that stuff. So I guess we start with some bios. If you want to do like the verbal resume. Jay, you're on my screen. Trey's not a video, so he gets relegated to second fiddle. Jay, explain who you are, what you do, and how you came to be in my circle, if you will.
All right. Jay Zimmerman. I am a certified peer counselor and a certified psychosocial rehabilitation practitioner. Lots of just letters that really just mean I'm somebody that, when I came out of the service, I served in the United States Army as a combat medic with 1st the 505th Parachute Infantry, 97 to late 04, early 05. When I first came out of the service, all those letters just mean I struggled myself to kind of like reacclimate back into society to what people would call being like the norm. So after that time in the service, kind of not knowing where I wanted to be or what I wanted to do, the VA presented me with this opportunity to kind of go back and be in this role of sharing what helps me to maintain wellness and to stay well with other veterans who are oftentimes, just like I was, hesitant to come into treatment for a variety of reasons. You know, but we know that there's more to recovery than just, meds, therapy, and it's a combination of a lot of things, and that's kind of what I do. I'm a huge advocate in the world of suicide prevention, particularly as it pertains to lethal means.
I appreciate that. And you and I connected because we met at a conference. There was a suicide prevention conference specifically focused on lethal means, specifically focused on firearms in San Francisco. And I was there as a representative of Walk the Talk America, which the listeners of this podcast have heard me discuss before. And I think your story is really cool because I love that you have the background to talk about your own journey, but also that you attend to the holistic response to distress, right? It's not just medicine. It's not just professional talk therapy. There's a variety of ways of doing that, and you do that in your professional life. So thank you, Trey. Hello.
What's going on? I'm Trey Miller. I former Marine, got out in 1998, spent some time overseas in some different places. I was with a unit called First Rig, and it was a surveillance reconnaissance intelligence group. And we kind of did some cool stuff here and there. Spent some time over in Eastern Africa and some other places. We can talk. Well, I guess we can talk about that. I was in Somalia. Spent some time in Korea, and obviously stationed over in Okinawa for over a year. Then back at Camp Pendleton. And yeah, it was interesting because we were talking about kind of our background. And I remember being right out of school. I was 19 years old from Dallas, Texas, and checked into my first unit in November. They said, "Oh, by the way, your unit's in workup, and y'all are heading out in January." And so I didn't really have time to understand what was going on. And I didn't understand the reality of when you live in suburbia and you are heading to Mogadishu and you don't know what's getting ready to happen. You don't understand what happens when you're there. And I remember my captain on the flight was basically saying, there's going to be some things that you're going to see that aren't going to make sense to you. They use women and children as shields. There are going to be 12-year-olds with AKs. And if our morals tell us not to pull a trigger. And if you don't, your buddies and your brothers might get hurt. And so that was the beginning of kind of, holy cow, this is real. Got out in 98, and I work a normal kind of a job for the last long time that pays the bills. But about 3 years ago, I started up a YouTube channel called Ghost Tactical. We do a lot of firearms, a lot of training. I still train all the time, all over the country. And that turned into a podcast called the Armed Citizen Podcast, where we have a lot of guests and we talk guns and the community and politics and pretty much anything and everything you can talk about. But a large portion of my mission with my channel and my podcast is military. So I like to get a lot of veterans on and all that. So how we met, Jake, we met through Michael Sedini and Walk the Talk America. You were at SHOT Show this past January, and we met down in the dungeon, I believe, of SHOT Show. And Mike's a great friend of mine, and I've been trying to help him out, loosely, not official capacity with Walk the Talk America for a couple of years, but Mike's a great guy, and I do what I can to help him out.
Walk the Talk America is amazing, and I don't want this particular conversation to be about that because I've had Mike on before about WTTA, and I'm a board member, and it's great. But I do want to tie this back to how Mike met Jay, which was at there was some sort of council in Washington, D.C. They pulled a bunch of people together where you and Mike met each other, and he has a funny story about that where he was like, "I'm invited to be the gun guy," and you're like, "No, I'm the gun guy," or something. Tell that story, Jay.
March of last year, the president signed an executive order Just like everything in the government, it's an acronym and it's long, and I'm not going to try to get it correct. But basically, it's prevent, and it's basically a group of people came together to talk specifically about the epidemic of suicide in America. Mike and I both wound up on the lethal means part of that roadmap, like how to develop a plan to address the mental health needs. And like I was coming to it from mental health and lethal means. He's from lethal means. We were sitting beside each other in an office in the Eisenhower building or whatever outside the White House. And it kind of, I think, dawned on us both about the same time that, you know, we were probably the only 2A guys in the room, because we just looked at each other and she's like, you're for it, right? I'm like, yeah, you're for it. And he kind of shared with me a little bit of his background. I shared with him a little bit of my background. And yeah, we were like the two voices in the room, you know, for gun rights.
It's a pretty cool story because the gun rights movement doesn't get a lot of traction in the mental health community, and that's the point of Walk the Talk America. It's to bring the two quote unquote sides together, as if there should be sides, right? Like, so there's gun owners, and then there's mental health advocates, and every time tragedy happens, blame shifting occurs. One side points to the other and says it's your fault, and then nothing happens, and nothing moves forward. And so Walk the Talk America is trying to move through that. And so what you guys were involved in is not necessarily like a panel to prevent all violent deaths from guns, but it was specifically suicide prevention oriented, I should say. And the idea is that firearms owners need to be mindful of safe storage, their own mental wellness, seeking treatment when it's required, and so on and so forth. And that's something that has not long been discussed within the firearms community. And some of that firearms community includes veterans, which is why I'm having you guys on this podcast, because I, as a mental health practitioner, I can reasonably acknowledge that most of us in the mental health community don't understand the veteran perspective on this. And I would like to know more. And I think our listeners, who are not all mental health practitioners, but just random people in the community, and we are international, as it turns out. My partner in Noggin Notes is in Cambodia, and I've interviewed people from across the globe. There are people across the world who all presumably are in mental health or near it, and will eventually rub elbows with somebody who served in their country's military service. And I think we would do well to understand that there's a different dynamic going on, where there's added pressures, where you deploy, you commit, you do all this training, the gun is made part of your job, and in so much the part of your identity, that when you get out, it's almost like, oh, you got to set this aside now, man. Like that's not you anymore. And you're helping with that when veterans discharge, and you're working with peer services and whatnot. And I want Jay to talk a little bit about how he helps people transition, you know, and do what's clearly presented as a binary term. It's like you're either for this or you're for that. And you're helping them to reconcile that. And then Trey, I want you to talk about what you're doing with the Armed Citizen podcast, insofar as helping gun owners acknowledge that they need to be safe and be mentally sound as well. So I'll let you guys just like kind of talk back and forth here, but that's my way of teeing it up.
I don't know if Trey wants to go first or wants me to take a shot.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Terrible podcast host, not nominating somebody.
No, man. It's fine. Really, you know, and I come at everything. I don't want to claim to be like the end all expert on veterans. As I think Trey would acknowledge, and most every veteran would acknowledge, there's such a wide array of jobs within the military. Each person's familiarity with firearms is different. And so therefore their level of identity surrounding that firearm is going to be different. So what I can really do is just speak to my identity of surrounding firearms, where I come